much Zoom material. Okay, thanks, folks, for your patience there. Welcome to the session. Scholarships Canada, SchoolFinder, Finding the Right School, Program, and Scholarship. Quick intro about me. My name is Logan. I'm the managing editor here at SchoolFinder and Scholarships Canada. They are sister sites, sort of a combo, each serving a slightly different purpose. A little bit about my background. I first went to college on an advanced technical diploma for video and film, and I worked as an editor for several years, but I wanted to work with words, so I went back to school. At university this time, I wanted the capital U university experience. So I went to U of T and got an honors BA in linguistics, writing, and rhetoric. So I have been around the block in that sense, and I know a thing or two about tuition fees, unfortunately. So we know school is good for getting paid, but it's about more than just that. Grads of higher education are more civically conscious in general, sort of engaged, well-rounded people. There's a sort of chicken-egg question to it, whether these types of folks gravitate to higher ed, or does higher ed produce more of these types of folks? I'll leave that to you and the philosophers to debate, or you can check out the World Bank link there if you want to dig into the details. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty. So I want to cover a couple of definitions. This first one is just about schools, cover a couple of common terms. University is typically the biggest schools that we have here in Canada. They're often focused on the bachelor degree, which is a 3 or 4 year program. In the States, they often call these colleges, but here in Canada, it's more accurate to say university. They are mostly publicly funded, but not always. Some are private. College, on the other hand, are typically smaller schools. They're focused more on hands-on technology type material. And trade certificates are big as well. Sometimes you'll hear this called community college in the States, sometimes here as well. They're generally publicly funded also. And then we have career colleges, which are smaller and may have partnerships with other public colleges or universities. These schools are privately funded, which means generally more expensive. Sometimes it can mean that. But it is shorter programs for career readiness, right? And then grad school is part of a university focused on after you've already done a degree or a diploma. So we'll cover a couple of details here too. Undergrad, when we talk about undergraduate, we're talking about essentially coming right out of high school. So if you've graduated high school, you're going to university, you're going to college, whatever, you are an undergrad, you're going into your undergrad. Graduate degree is for after that. You are no longer an undergrad, you are a graduate. And so you can take further education in that way. At the master's level, and then sometimes folks will go on to even PhD, that's to become a doctor or an academic maybe. Also, grad school covers stuff like law school, teachers college, and that kind of thing. Then we'll talk a bit about co-ops and internships. Now, these are hot topics, keywords that I would urge you to keep an eye out for when you're looking for programs in schools. The scientific term is work integrated learning. Basically, it means you're getting paid to study, or maybe you're studying while you work, depends how you look at it. But typically your college or uni will hook you up with a job, short term, where you can get some experience firsthand, right? Actually do the work in the real environment, get out of the classroom into the office, as they say. So if you're able to take a co-op or an internship, really, they're great opportunities, would absolutely recommend. Finally, apprenticeship. This is a sort of other strand, and it is all about the skilled trades. So if you're interested in construction, working with your hands, like plumbing, electrician, that kind of thing, the trades are the route, and that is an apprenticeship. Which is working with somebody who's already in the field, sort of shadowing them, following them around, doing what they tell you to do. So it's a great field to consider. Canada is in deep need of new apprentices in a lot of different fields. I think some of these I've highlighted here are in that category. Housing crunch and so on, we need people to help build homes. So skilled trades are going to see more and more focus in the coming years, I think. Okay. So there's a lot to consider there. We try to make it a little easier to dig into what is going to fit you best, especially if you're not sure. This quiz that's on the site is made by a career counselor, Roger Harp. He's been at it for literally decades. He's an older guy at this point. Would advocate the career quiz. It'll take you probably 10 or 15 minutes. It's kind of detailed, dozens of questions, certainly. That'll give you a sort of, I hesitate to use the term horoscope, but it's a little bit of a personal insight, kind of fun and games type thing. You can take it for what it is. Don't base your whole life on it, but it can give you some decent insight. For example, for me, it rated me like 85, 90% writing. You want to be in a writing career. And sure enough, that is what I want. So you can make of that what you will. I'd also encourage you to check out your matching schools. So SchoolFinder will just generate a list. You can check profiles, tick the box, and submit. Sorry, I got logged out here. Yeah, so here I am. This is my dummy account here. And you can see I've got some matching schools, though, to be honest, I believe I need to share my screen. I'll share the website now just to demo. And here it is, matching schools. All you need to do is tick one. You can check out more about them, find the whole profile, and so on. We won't get too into the details, but you can learn a lot about the given school. And then just jump down and hit submit. And you'll get more info about Nipissing in your inbox before you know it. So we'll jump back. Yes, for folks who are asking about the recording, absolutely. We will share the recording and maybe the deck too. I hadn't considered that, but we might be able to share the deck file also. So yeah, a little musical screen share here, but you're matching schools, so that's the sense. Schools will reach out to you directly. So Nipissing, for example, is going to send me an email tomorrow thanking me for my interest, and they're going to want to chat about what is right for me. So that's kind of convenient. Matching programs is a similar thing. It is a list of programs that sort of fit you, and it can be a pretty extreme list. We saw maybe a dozen matching schools. I think I'm going to have probably a few dozen matching programs because, well, we'll get into the details of why, but the basic idea is once I've got my results, I can sort them comme ça. And as you can see, oh yeah, I didn't match to 269. It's quite a lot, right? I could filter this down further, but what I really want to do is add them to compare. So maybe I'm interested in a couple of different life science programs here. I can add them to a list, compare them. I can save them to come back to later. And yeah, check out what are the grades required. It's a little bit more difficult to get in here, but a couple of more prerequisites required over here. So you can compare. It's handy, especially when you're thinking about price. Cost can be a big factor. Great, so I will jump back to my PowerPoint. So that's matching programs. It's another good way to help you explore your options. Say hello to Wisp, who's come to join us for the evening. And yeah, once you've compared your programs, you can start to dig into the details. Each program listed is going to have all sorts of info about prerequisites, grade requirements, anything you can imagine is probably going to be there, cost for domestic or international. And critically, of course, a link to the school's website where you're going to find the most up-to-date info. All right. So updating your profile, this is something else we highly recommend. Every now and then, maybe every few months, kind of check in, or if you're feeling in the mood and you're really going to devote your evening, mess around with it in real time. Edit your profile to explore alternative results. You can find something you didn't necessarily expect. So I'm going to demo this very quickly as well, just so that we're all on the same page. Firefox. Great. So here is my profile, my dashboard, and now I'm in and editing it. And you can see all these details. I'm a student, I'm in high school, and so on. My educational interests. This is the big one you're probably going to want to focus on. Fields of study, degree level, when you want to start, maybe where you want to study is another big factor. Currently, I'm set just to Canada. and I'm looking for a 3 to 4 year bachelor degree in biology. But there are a lot more options than that. For example, we use a Canadian and US government list of fields of study, and it can be pretty deep, as you can see. So if you're not totally certain what niche you're most interested in, I would typically, when you're faced with lists like these, try to stick closer to the general option. You'll generally find something with a comma general biology, and this is the most overarching general umbrella version of the field. But of course, if I'm really gung-ho, I'm serious, I might know I want to do molecular biology. Maybe I'm certain about that, or immunology, for example, because it's all in the news. So you might want to mess around with that, even swap to a diploma, see what's available, maybe check other countries as well. The US and UK especially are pretty popular. And then you'll get served different matching schools. For example, USask is now on my list. Okay, so we'll jump back to the PowerPoint and move on. So the final big factor I want to talk about for schools, I think, is events and chatting with students. So these are two alternative ways that are a little bit more people forward to help you really get a sense of what school and especially what program is really going to resonate with you. So events are handy. I mean, you're at an event right now, but lots will be hosted by actual schools, of course, and they'll be either in person or virtual. And then a campus tour as well. You can jump in. SchoolFinder itself makes them a little easy to find. We've indexed quite a few virtual tours for a lot of different schools here, but these are not all that exists. It's fairly Canada focused, of course. So yeah, I would advocate taking a virtual tour. I would advocate jumping out to some events. Online is great, in person is even better. A lot of students do typically go to a school that is near their home, which is totally fair. So if you can spare the time and get out there, I would check out the events page on SchoolFinder, and of course, virtual tours. And then finally, the chat with students thing. This is something that's become a lot easier of late. Not only because of tools like Unibuddy, but just in general internet life, right? It's a lot easier. And we get reports from students that it's a big factor in when they really are making decisions, that they love to hear from people who have already been through it, who are in second, third, fourth year, maybe in a same or similar program. Maybe they're from the same part of the world. If you're from outside of Canada, it might be nice to get the perspective of somebody who's in that same boat. So here's a quick example. Manitoba, Camosun College, you got it all sorts of things here. Brock for music. You can chat with them, quick sign in and all that. And before you know it, Chloe will be telling you all about her fourth year in music. So that can be pretty handy. And it's nice that these types of tools do exist now, because that type of hearing from other students wasn't really possible when I was going to school outside of the come to an education fair in person and chat with someone at a booth, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but tools have changed since then. Okay. Oh yeah, one more. Speaking of in-person fairs, we have a few coming up. If you're in any of these 4 major cities, Calgary, Vancouver, Ottawa, Toronto, at the end of the month, we are running a fair in each city. Lots of schools and non-educational institutions like government groups and so on, bodies, volunteer abroad, gap year type associations will be present, and you can chat in the old school, come up to the booth and grab some swag and have a quick discussion, as we used to do in the old days. So I'd encourage you, yeah, especially if you're going to be in Toronto, because I will be there and you can accost me. All right, so that's all I wanted to talk about on schools and programs, at least until we get closer to the end and we take some questions if there are questions to that effect. Otherwise, do a quick time check here. Oh yeah, we got plenty of time. Another half hour or so, and we'll focus a little bit more on scholarships, bursaries, and awards, and so on. Okay, just as we did for the schools and programs section, we will talk a little bit about terms. These are words you'll hear get thrown around quite a bit. Scholarship often can be used as a general term. Scholarships Canada, for example, encompasses all these extra things. But typically, in the more precise sense, a scholarship is related to grades or accomplishments. Classically, it's you got a 95 in high school, and so you get an entrance scholarship, right? But again, sometimes they're used just interchangeably, scholarship as money for school. Now, scholarships are often renewable. This is a keyword you're going to want to keep an eye out for. A renewable scholarship is one that you continue to qualify for year in, year out, even without further applying. So, for example, you, in your first year, get an entrance scholarship that is renewable, and you keep your grades up, and in year 2, they'll pay you again, no application needed, probably no action needed really on your part. So if you can find renewable scholarships, all the better. You really want to keep an eye out for that. Now, bursary, this is an award, money for school, based on financial need. So typically, if you've got a gap in your finances and who doesn't, you may qualify for bursaries. They may be related to certain living circumstances or country of origin, bursaries for refugees, that kind of thing. They may be renewable, they may not be. Award, another sort of general term, very accomplishment specific. You might think of coming out on top of your philosophy class in second year, and they give you the philosophy department award, maybe. Generally, it's a one-time cash support, right? Awards are not generally renewable. And then a grant is specifically a one-time support, also not renewable. It's money you don't have to pay back. Not that you do any of these other things either, but a grant typically related to research and higher level thing. If you're trying to do a research proposal, you may try for a grant proposal, get some grant money to fund your research. Yeah, so hopefully all these terms are clear, as we will use them going forward. So scholarship myths, I'll cover these quickly. Try to disabuse yourselves of some of these notions, especially around marks. Students feel like they don't have the grades, but the actual number of awards that care about grades is not high. More and more, we're seeing other factors taking precedence here. Myth 2, lots of competition. This is a yes and no kind of thing. Really might depend on the award that you're looking for. For example, the Loran scholarships are open right now for nominations, and I believe they're worth $100,000 a year. And you can expect, yes, there will be a lot of competition for that award and similar programs. But what might surprise you is that a lot of admins are looking for more applications, and some folks don't get any apps at all. We check in with admins now and then. Every couple of years, we'll run surveys and try to get a sense of what the landscape is like out there. And nobody is looking for fewer applications, really. Nobody is saying, draw back for me, right? They're all looking for more people to get in there. So if you're feeling like, the pool is diluted, maybe not. Only schools give scholarships, definitely not true. All sorts of organizations, companies, unions, and so on will give out awards. As a personal anecdote I like to share, when I was growing up, I worked at a No Frills, which was a union environment. So the union offered a scholarship to me. I worked at the No Frills itself. The Loblaws company offered scholarships. Then my dad, who worked at Coca-Cola offered scholarships. And Coke was a union workplace. That union also offered scholarships. So there was 4 opportunities for me right there, just based off of a little bit of who you know and where you work. Now, that's not to say I took home all 4 of those, but they were available. Deadlines only in the spring, definitely not true. We see award deadlines throughout the year. We'll see that a little bit when we look at the site. Scholarship season is kind of a myth. You want to be checking in a little bit every month, maybe an hour a week. We'll talk about it a little bit, but it's not like, okay, I'm going to sit down for a weekend, apply to all my scholarships for the year, and now I'm done and dusted. Unfortunately, it's not really the case. Financial need. Only about a third of the scholarships that we index on Scholarships Canada care about financial need. grades, as we saw, is a factor. Other things are a factor as well, especially volunteer, community service, leadership, that L word that's so hard to define sometimes. Quick recap. Awards often don't care about marks. Most admins want more apps, more than just schools. Award scholarships, of course. Deadlines happen all year round. You don't necessarily need to be in financial need, though it doesn't hurt. And odds are decent that you may be in financial need anyway. A lot of people are. Can't win if you don't apply. This one's a bit of a trick because it's a slightly double-sided sword thing, in that you need to put time up front to hope to get rewarded down the line. So that can be challenging, especially if you're not in a position to give up much of your time. But we do try to encourage students to think about themselves as scholarship recipients. One big factor that I've seen is a sort of self-talk element where people can convince themselves that it's not for me, it's never going to happen. I'm not eligible for reason A, B, C. Reconceptualizing yourself as somebody who is worthy of receiving a scholarship can go a long way to reframing your attitude and keeping a good spirit, positive spirit, when you don't receive them, right? Because chances are you are going to apply to more than you will actually receive. So having that sort of resilience and being able to see yourself as somebody who warrants a scholarship can help. Okay. So where do you find them? Scholarships Canada is one source, and of course, it's the one we're going to talk the most about today. What Scholarships Canada is an index. It's a database of awards that are open to Canadian students or international students coming to Canada. That's the ambition. In a perfect world, we'd have every award available in Canada updated the minute it is. But we do the next best thing, which is keep them as updated as we can. Now, if you're looking for a place to start, the featured scholarships is the best way, I think. It is a landing page where new stuff goes up fairly often, and it's not always just scholarships, though it is that. So here's a pretty cool one, SGI, 7 awards, $2,500 to people in specific provinces, right? It's not going to be for everybody, but this is, 60 or more % of the country for sure. And then, yeah, 70% grades, not a big deal, right? So that's kind of cool. There's also other stuff that's a little bit different, like this I Say. This is survey type stuff. They'll pay you to weigh in on a forum or a diary. If you're looking for extra cash, it's not a bad idea. But you'll also find stuff like Canada's Luckiest Student, which is a massive prize pack of like 50 grand, one of the most popular ones that we see. So this is pretty cool, but there's only one luckiest student. So anyway, the featured scholarships page is a pretty good spot to start if you're really not sure what you want to do. You might find a school you'd never considered that might offer you a decent amount of cash because you qualify in some particular way. Obviously, you can use the Apply Now buttons to find out more and so on. Yes, so that's the featured scholarships page. Jump back to PowerPoint. All right. So beyond the featured scholarships, you kind of want to do something of a self-inventory. There are a few different factors, personal factors that will weigh in on what scholarships you may or may not be eligible for, and we'll talk about that. Field of study is probably the very biggest. What you're studying matters a lot to most scholarship admins. Generally, we see more support for STEM fields than arts these days. It's the way of the world, I guess. So if you're really trying to weigh, do I go biology or do I go contemporary poetry? You're going to have probably more luck on the biology front. You never know. Year of study is a big factor. Entrance awards are probably the most plentiful. Pretty much it gets harder and harder the deeper in you get. So schools are often sort of competing with one another for choice students. They're trying to draw you in with these entrance awards, right? We saw one from Ohio Northern there with like $22,000, right? These entrance awards are great because they're often renewable and they're for students right out of high school. As you get deeper into your post-secondary career, second, third, fourth year, it can be more challenging. They are not often as many awards available for students who are later in their educational career as those high school students who are being fought over, in a sense. So yeah, the year of study kind of matters. That's why I spend so much time talking about renewable awards. If you can get something in your first year that's renewable, at least you've got sort of a steady stream that you can count on. A few $1,000s a year can take some of the stress off, help you sleep at night, maybe. Activity is another big one. In the States, we often think of going to Penn State on the full football scholarship or whatever. We don't have too much of that in Canada, though certain sports, of course, we do, even ringette, field hockey, you name it. But any other activities as well. Maybe you're into religious things with your church or your mosque or whatever. But the three I want to highlight here are leadership, community involvement, and volunteer experience. These three are major pillars that you'll see, again and again. Now, I'll spend a bit of time here because I think it is important. Leadership doesn't necessarily mean that you are president of the student council. It just means that you are sort of engaged with your fellow human beings, right? So maybe there's no anime club at your high school and you decide you want to watch anime with some pals at lunchtime. And so you start the anime club. And it's not much more than filling out a form, right? But that still demonstrates leadership, clear cut. Maybe you volunteer to like keep scores for your school's swim team or something, right? You're stepping up, you're showing that you give a shit. That's the idea. Community involvement, that can mean your school, it can mean your neighborhood. Maybe you do friendly visits at the local old folks home. That kind of thing really looks good to a lot of scholarship admins. Academic average, we talked about that. The better your grades, the better odds you have. No other way about it. The higher your grades, the easier the time will be. Other factors, heritage. This is a big one. Equity-seeking groups are getting more focus to sort of correct historic injustices, right? In Canada, especially, that often means Indigenous folks. We've seen a lot of new awards for Indigenous people, especially in sort of underrepresented industries like STEM. For example, one of the featured scholarships we have right now is aimed at Indigenous folks interested in the electrical industry, right? So certain like niches like that. We've seen awards for people with Chinese background, Polish. I've seen Norwegian and much more. Affiliation, yeah. So I talked about my dad working at Coke and myself at No Frills, so I won't get too into that. But you or your family, that's the idea. Personal circumstances, this is stuff about you that is indelible. Maybe you're a mature student. I added a couple of mature student scholarships just today. Single parents one, 2S LGBTQ plus would be another, that kind of thing. Financial need, we won't get into that, but it's pretty self-explanatory. And then location, where you live and go to school. Where you're from may be a factor. I know back in the day, some scholarships from small towns where the town itself would pull together maybe $1,000 to offer to a high school student who is going off to college that year. That kind of idea. So if you're from a town somewhere, you never know. Worth looking into. Okay. So Scholarships Canada does its best to crunch all of these factors down into a single profile and match you to awards. What it will do, and I'll sort of, demo this a little bit on Firefox. Yeah, so log in here. Great. So what it will do, I've already got an account, obviously. If you're just starting out, it's going to ask you a ton of questions about who you are, what your background is, where you're from, what you're interested in studying. I'm currently set to microbiology and immunology. You might not know, you can just tick not decided. Where you want to go, when you're studying, et cetera, et cetera. It's going to ask you all sorts of questions. heritage, extracurricular activities. Maybe you're into diving, drama, engineering. Your personal circumstances as well. I've got myself set with disability here. You might have be LGBTQ, mature student, as I mentioned. And yeah, then it will send you to your dashboard where you will get some matching awards. This is going to distill the entire database of tens of thousands of options into something that's more manageable. And it will sort it by deadline. So I've got a couple of months here for the Servicescape Award, whatever it is, about to enroll, looking for extra help. Sounds like me, $1,000. Let's find out how to apply. And sure enough, here are all the details, terms and conditions. November 30th is the deadline, so there's a bit of time, application form, and so on. So the idea is not to give you, here are the 10 awards that you will definitely win, and here's the money type thing. It's meant to help you ID what is available and put you in front of organizations that you otherwise wouldn't necessarily know about. So in some cases, you'll find stuff like this where the frequency is 3 times a year. So they're going to have a revolving deadline a couple times a year. Looks like the next one's going to be February. Yeah, so it lets you just click through and find out what you're looking for. Jump back to my matches here. Yeah, and you can expand them, see all sorts of stuff, and check through, sort them, you can save them, you can nix them from your list, and so on. You can also scroll down and find featured scholarships. Scholarships for your type, your degree type, your program, and so on. And again, at any time, you can jump in, modify your profile. Maybe you're not interested in microbiology anymore, you'd rather be an actor. And you can save and check out your matches. It'll give you some schools, skip that. And you've got a new pile here to check out. So that's the idea. Oops, share my screen. Yeah, so it will require a little bit of legwork on your part to kind of dig through. You'll also be asked about subscriptions. This is something that I'd really advocate. There are a few different options, including the newsletter, which myself and a colleague produce every week. And that's great, but really, if you're going to take anything, what you definitely want is the scholarship deadline alerts. This is a monthly email that will give you a handful of awards that are closing soon right to your inbox. So if you don't want to mess around with coming back to the site, this will send you something you can kind of see in the background here, scholarship alerts, a given award worth whatever, closing soon. Again, they won't necessarily be perfect matches all the time, but it will open you to the universe of possibilities, what might actually be out there. Okay, some general advice and tips before we kind of get into questions. I think we've still got time. Yeah, 7:30. Getting motivated, I advocate treating scholarships like studying for an exam or going to the gym, in that a little bit over time is going to be a lot more effective than trying to grind it out the night before. You can't get jacked over a weekend. Same idea. Invest your time, same idea. Scholarships Canada deadline alerts, again, right to your inbox is pretty handy. And you'll also catch stuff like featured awards and so on in there, other details. Understanding the requirements, here, when in doubt, reach out. Each award is going to have a contact info blurb at the bottom, and you can reach out to the admins and contact them directly. That's actually not a bad idea because it shows that you are engaged, you are somebody who is paying attention, and sometimes that looks good on you. Applying to smaller awards, so yeah, awards of $1,000, $750, $1,500 might not seem like much in the face of an $8,000 tuition bill, but if you can actually take one home, it's going to be a lot more effective than maybe applying for the Loran Award with 10,000 other people. Being prepared, this is, there's a quick way to sort of make sure you have your documents ready, so we'll talk about that in a second. And then not giving up. This goes back to that resilience message. You're not necessarily going to receive every award that you apply for. So keeping a sort of stiff upper lip is always good advice. Okay, boilerplate documents. What you want to have before you start getting ready for scholarship applications, or you could even start this right now, this very evening, creating a boilerplate template for your docs. These are pretty much the general things you're going to need for most scholarship applications. Resume, 1 page is all you need. People don't read resumes, they skim them. So keep it clean, keep it short, keep it to the point. Personal statement of about 500 words. Next slide, we'll talk a bit more about that. And then references. Two is pretty good. You don't want your parents or your friends, if you can help it. Teachers, coaches, religious figures, volunteer supervisors, these type of people are generally better. And you want to customize these boilerplate docs for each award. So once you've got the basic framework down, you may want to make tweaks because you love hammocks or hot tub covers or duct tape or whatever the given award is. But personal statements, here are the basics. You could write your personal statement this evening, and in half the time you apply to a given scholarship that requires a statement, it will more or less cover one or more of these topics. So in about 500 words, which is a page or two, depending on how you space it, cover these 4 things. Who are you? Which is, what's your background? What are you about? How do you see yourself? Who are you? What are your goals? Like, why do you want to go to school? What are you hoping to achieve? Like, what are you going to do after this? What are you getting into? What would receiving the award mean to you? How would becoming a scholarship recipient from organization X, how would that impact you? How would that change your life? And how would that change the people around you, right? Your parents, your community, the people who are looking up to you because they're younger or whatever, your little sister kind of thing. How would that impact? If you can pull together your personality with some convincing answers to most of these questions, and you've demonstrated some amount of leadership, you're engaged with your community a little bit, you're showing up to school, you got decent grades and so on, you should be pretty much in good shape. Okay, some scholarship FAQs. I'm going to cover a few of these top questions that we get, and then we'll dive into the Q&A for the rest of the session. I want to cover one thing first and foremost, though. The best odds you have of actually receiving a scholarship are likely to come from the school that you attend in the end. So if you choose the University of Calgary, probably your best odds of getting a scholarship are going to come from University of Calgary. So don't sleep on the actual school itself, but make sure you consider outside organizations. Okay, so a couple different FAQs here. When should I apply? Generally, you need to be accepted to college or uni first. Some awards are open to current high school students, but most of the time you need to be enrolled. Awards for tradespeople, yes, but they're not super common because of the structure of apprenticeships and the cost breakdown and all that. It's a different sort of system. You will find them, they're just not all that common. You want to generally be looking at the diploma or certificate level. How many can you reply to or receive? As many as you like, there's no max. Unless it's from a given organization, they may not let you have 2 awards from them, but 2 awards from 2 different people, no problem at all. The highest value awards, we talked about this a bit, the full ride kind of idea. There's not too many, though some of the big ones are listed here. Can I defer an award? Some cases, yes. Some cases, no, really depends. If it's from a school, probably not. So when in doubt, reach out. And then awards for international students is a very popular question. They are much less common than awards for domestic students, which is citizens and permanent residents. So they can be more competitive and often are more focused on grades. So if you're an international student hoping to come to Canada, it's going to be challenging to get a scholarship. Not that you can't or won't, but they're just fewer in number and there's more competition, like flat out. So next steps depends on where you are. If you're in grade 11, you want to be focusing on that resume, volunteer, which is about meaning and not just raw hours. How did it impact you? How did it impact the people you volunteered with? If you're in grade 12, you want to start applying for schools and awards. A lot of colleges and unis will be closing apps in January, February. So it's practically already time, even though it's back to school season right now, it's practically back to application season also. So something to consider. You're looking for entrance awards, and especially renewable awards. If you're already in college or uni, it's a little bit tougher. You want to get involved with clubs and associations, student union, that kind of thing. Check with your financial aid office. Obviously, they are the experts. Generally, then you're looking for awards that are open to second years or above. Awards that are nominated by your department, maybe, or by these clubs and associations that you work with. Okay, so that's it. One more plug for Study and Go Abroad. End of the month, Calgary, Vancouver, Ottawa, Toronto. Otherwise, would advocate it. It's fun. Come to Toronto. I'll be there. Otherwise, we'll take some time for Q&A. So, as I mentioned, please use the Q&A panel. I see we've got quite a few in there already. I'll try to do them as best I can. And otherwise, we'll host another session before you know it. And we hope to see you at Saga and SchoolFinder. Finally, as we get into the Q&A, I'm going to launch a couple of polls as well. We're just trying to solicit feedback on renaming sections, so feel free to weigh in there as we get into some of the questions. Okay, can you share how to find which specific program and university is best for you? Yeah, generally it's talk to current students, attend events, take a virtual or in-person tour. The more of these kind of things you can do, the better. It's often a good idea too, even to like reach out and ask questions, request info from the schools that interest you. You can fill out a quick form and they'll get back to you, and they want to talk to you. They want to answer your questions. Okay. What's a full tuition waiver? That would mean full tuition waiver would be essentially a scholarship that covers all of your tuition, or like you're not paying a tuition. So tuition for a Canadian student is often $7,000-8,000 maybe a year. For an international student, it might be $25,000 a year. If you get a tuition waiver, forget about that. So I hope that answers it. The best filmmaking courses in universities, can't really weigh in on that. You'll have to do some digging. Yeah, it's hard to say. How could I go straight into med school in the UK? Not totally sure about med school. I certainly know in the Caribbean, it's possible to take a 5 or 6 year program where they'll roll a Bachelor of Science in with a medical degree. The UK may have something similar. They certainly do for law and that type of thing. So I think medical school might fall in there too. You'd have to do some digging. What should I consider when looking for a program in chemistry? Should I focus on the institution or how they rank in Canada? Yeah, rankings are interesting. I wouldn't put too much stock in them. Often there's not a lot of change year to year. And there have been some reports out of the States of essentially schools like stacking the deck and kind of lying. I wouldn't, no reports out of Canada about that or anything, but I have seen that out of the States. So rankings is more like fun, reading the tea leaves kind of thing. I'd be interested more in like student experience and the types of publications that are coming out of there. If you're in a STEM program, like what are they actually researching in chemistry? What are they doing in the field? That's what I would want to know. Best scholarship to apply for if you're applying for the first time. Entrance scholarships from the college or university that you're interested in really are the best ones. Beyond that, I'd be looking at stuff that is like creative. Personally, I'd be looking for like essay writing scholarships, but that's just me because I like to write. Your mileage may vary and differ. How would you know if your scholarship's renewable or not? It will say it outright. That should be pretty clear. What happens if you don't qualify for a renewable, but you do the next year? Can you still apply? It's an interesting question. Probably in most cases, no, which I think is going to be kind of rough, but true. Generally, these entrance scholarships especially are like, they're trying to lure you in, right? If they've already got you, they may not extend that. So it's, again, it's a when in doubt, reach out kind of thing. Best always to plead your case in person at the financial aid office because they're going to be the most forgiving and able to help you. So we're at time. I'm going to go a few more minutes. We'll answer a few more questions for sure. Stick around if you wish, but otherwise, thanks for weighing in on the poll, everyone. Some interesting results here. I've got one more poll as well. Much more fun. Just curious about laptop stickers. Otherwise, how hard to get a scholarship? Yeah, I think we kind of covered that. It is kind of difficult, depends. GPA matter, my colleague is answering that. Possible to find a co-op position in university if your school does not have a co-op program. Maybe, but it's going to really be on you to go the extra mile. You'll need to coordinate with a business to take you on, and you'll need to convince somebody in a position of leadership in your school to let you get credit for that. So if it's not already built into the program structure, it's going to be incumbent upon you to make it happen, which again definitely demonstrates leadership, and it's kind of a like good on you for making that happen kind of thing. You could improve the lives of the students who come after you. But yeah, in general, most schools will offer a certain amount of co-op programs, and they don't really expect you to set most of that up. I hope that helps. What is OSAP, and when and how do you apply for OSAP? Okay, interesting. Excuse me. OSAP stands for the Ontario Student Assistance Program. It is basically a provincial student loan. Student loans are pretty much the best debt you can take as a student, besides none. If you can get away with none, great. Student loans, the next best. OSAP is the Ontario version. There are versions in BC, Alberta, et cetera. Most provinces have their own, and the federal government has some too. When do you apply? Yeah, when and how. As you're getting ready to apply for school, you're going to want to apply for OSAP as well. I've not had the time to join any extracurriculars. Would that be a factor in getting accepted to university? Probably not. Getting accepted to university won't really hinge on your extracurriculars typically. They are more, nice to have stuff for scholarship eligibility and so on. Applying for a competitive major, how much do extracurriculars benefit? Yeah, again, does it differ between universities? Yes, I think it will. Given extracurricular may be more important at one institution than another. But again, if it's really down to you and another student, right, then maybe those extracurriculars will be a factor, super competitive, but they're going to be more on the margins. Do you have to know what program in school you want to get into in order to get a scholarship? Often, yes. I kind of mentioned this. Most awards expect you to be enrolled, so you pretty much should have a good sense of where you want to go. How can you make your scholarship application stand out? Yeah, that is the perennial question. Having a interesting personal story with a strong sense of voice, letting your personality come through in your writing is important. But beyond that, yeah, it's really up to what you do and how you portray it. It's really difficult. That's where that 500-word personal statement is so important, because it's pretty much the only chance you have to show who you are. Do we include all scholarships possible? That's the objective for sure. It's not 100% foolproof. You'll want to use other sources. Google's good. There are other scholarship websites too. Scholartree and Wyconic come to mind. You're going to want to go as far as you can, right? Look as far and wide as possible. Specific major, if you want to pursue a career as a pharmacist, there are lots of pharmacy undergrad programs as well. I would start there. Otherwise, I'd go for something like chemistry or biology, life sciences, that kind of thing. Can you apply if you've yet to apply for uni? Pretty much no in most cases. Accept more than one scholarship? Yep. How do I know some of these aren't scams? Are they verified? Yeah, it's an interesting question. We do our best. We do try to verify each award or each admin at least. I don't think we index any scams. It's not impossible, I guess, but yeah, folks do often ask this question. The only thing I would be wary of is being asked to pay a fee to apply. Though even that I have seen from a legitimate organization, the Canadian Federation of University Women, for example, charges like a $60 fee to apply. So that should be pretty rare, would happen. Scholarships Canada generally should be pretty clean, but yeah, when in doubt, always ask questions is the only way to know. What courses to get into med school in Canada, oh my goodness, science, science, science. Med school in Canada is so hard to get into. There are so few seats. The Caribbean is typically where most Canadian med school students actually end up going. Do universities give scholarships to students going to other schools? No, short answer, no. The rare like partnership agreement maybe is going to be the exception, but I wouldn't count on that. I'm in grade 11. Are the scholarships I apply to now, are there scholarships? Yeah, so there's no real way to filter that because most awards expect you to be enrolled in college or uni. Now, there are a handful that are intended for high school students or that are more based on age than stage. So they do exist. Scholarship Canada doesn't really have a good way to filter those, unfortunately. So you'll just have to kind of do some digging. But in general, grade 11, I'd be focusing more on building up my credibility, essentially, to be ready to apply next time. So thanks for weighing in on the laptop sticker poll as well. Okay, I plan to apply to scholarships before uni next year. How do I do that when some require my acceptance letter? Exactly. Yeah, so in some cases, they want the acceptance letter. What I would do is literally upload instead an explanatory note saying University of Calgary does not offer them until June, right? And like, I'm happy to replace this when I can, but I would take my chances and apply with an explanation that instead of just saying, oh, well, too bad. Yeah, so I hope that helps. Recommend saving scholarships for years to apply to later. I wouldn't say years. Often scholarship stock is fairly static, but you see churn as well. That's the real challenge of maintaining a database like this, of an index like this, is that while so many awards are available year to year, many others do change. So yeah, I mean, you can hope that it will be available next year, but you can't necessarily rely on that in any given case. So it's a bit of a risk. Okay. When would I have to apply to get early acceptance? Depends on the school. Probably like December, January in most cases. What happens if we apply, but our courses get switched later on? Yeah, that should be probably not too big a deal. I'm not too sure about that. Scholarships asking for proof of enrollment. Yeah, I mentioned that. Science major for pharmacy, mentioned that. Chemistry, bio, life sciences, that kind of thing, or an actual pharmacy undergrad if you can find one. Leadership positions in school, absolutely. Link to the slides, we'll send that along with a recording via email later. How does a scholarship verify that you come from a low-income household? It's an interesting question. If they verify at all, which they may not, they may generally ask to see a form from your student aid providers. So here in Ontario, that is OSAP, which we mentioned earlier. They are the student loan provider here in the province. They will assess you for financial need, right? And say because your income is X, we say you get Y dollars. You can then show that to the admin and say, hey, OSAP has shown that I'm low income, like it's verified, right? So that's probably the best way. Okay, how do students receive the scholarship? Sometimes it's a check, often the money goes directly to the school. If your high school is not in the options, that's okay. You can just key it in or skip it. Your actual high school in most cases won't matter too much. But how do you think reception will be of a student looking for financial need? One parent makes a lot, the other makes very little. They just look at household income, so probably doesn't really matter what your individual parents make in most cases. Some of these scholarships for Montreal, Quebec students, maybe, I'm not totally sure about this question from Sabrina. Some awards will be specifically for students from specific cities. Any way I can get around the country in zip code questions? I ask myself that every day. I wish there was, but not really. We're getting close to overtime, about 5 more minutes. My voice is starting to give out, but try to do a few more. I do want to thank you again, folks, though, for joining us this evening. Specific reason why unis and scholarships rarely give them out for health sciences. Why are they solely for engineering, math, and physics students? It's a tough question. I think the cynical answer is that a lot of organizations will use scholarships as a sort of recruiting tool. And so cybersecurity firms, electrical engineering firms, whomever, might offer awards because they're trying to entice people to work in that industry. Healthcare, on the other hand, has a very different funding model and is, in many cases, underfunded, at least here in Ontario. And so there are fewer comparably organizations who are trying to lure people into those fields. So that's kind of my hunch, but I don't know that there is a single answer to that question, I'm afraid. Best time to apply? Yes, apply before Christmas. Generally, you want to apply, take multiple offers from different schools. Yeah, I mean, you're going to only accept one offer ultimately. You can entertain multiple until you pull the trigger on the single one that you're going to go to. But then you can't take scholarships from a school you're not going to. Are students allowed to accept more than one? Yeah, for sure. If you're LGBTQ, you get an advantage. Wouldn't say that. I think it's more trying to correct for historical disadvantages by, filling gaps that otherwise went ignored for many years. So yeah, I wouldn't get too salty about that. Can you use two from different organizations for the same uni? Yeah, absolutely. Currently processing a ton of hours, want to apply, but haven't uploaded all my hours. Am I allowed to put the amount of hours I'm supposed to have? Yeah, I assume this means for like volunteering or something. I would say yes, but the focus on total hours volunteered is not important. I would focus more on the quality, how it changed you, how it changed the people you volunteered with. Okay, matching schools, got no matching schools, got a few, wondering what I might have done. Yeah, I can't really say totally on what any given match will or will not give you. Sometimes it depends on what new info has been updated on the site, right? We have a massive mandate to keep a lot of information up to date. So some stuff changes behind the scenes that may affect the results that you see on the front end. So it's hard to say. Volunteers needed, volunteer hours absolutely needed. No, it's just generally good to have. What should we include on our resume? That's outside the scope here. You'll find lots of good stuff. Some people you should ask to be your personal reference. Good question. We have info on Scholarships Canada about that. Generally, though, like teachers, coaches, religious figures, etc. Applying to fewer scholarships with a better essay versus more scholarships with a mediocre essay. It's an interesting question. I would go for more scholarships with a great essay, but of course, that's easy to say. Generally, probably better to focus on fewer ones that you feel better about your odds of winning. As somebody who has read a lot of mediocre scholarship essays, they're not fun. Nobody likes to receive a mediocre essay. So better essay is always better. What mark in high school to get a scholarship? No flat zone. I would say 70 is probably the floor, really, in most cases. Better schools, quote unquote, right? Higher ranked, bigger, more funding, may have higher requirements. Something like 85 might be the floor for a renewable entrance award. But again, a lot of awards don't care about grades really at all. Okay, it's 8 o'clock. Where can I apply? Happens if you go to grade 13. How does that impact scholarships? Shouldn't impact you too badly. You'll still be a first year entering student in next year when you go to uni. Best to wait till you apply to schools. Yeah, absolutely. Going to the Toronto one. Do you have to let them know how many people are coming? Show proof you've signed up. Oh yeah, Saga. No, yeah, you can just show up. Don't worry too much about registration. We'd like to know how many people are coming, but if you just, door crash, no big deal. Okay, how do you apply after you've enrolled? Yeah, a lot of these questions are similar to ones we've covered already, so I think I might sign off here. Again, the recording will be available via email to anybody who registered. We'll send that, and probably the deck as well, in an email tomorrow or Friday or the weekend. I would encourage you hit scholarshipscanada.com. There's tons of info there, not only the scholarship listings themselves, but FAQs and a lot of answers to some of these types of questions that we see again and again in the chat. Otherwise, I'm going to give my voice a rest. Thank you, folks, for joining us and sticking around till the end. We're definitely over time. Have a great evening. I really do wish you the best of luck. Some of the stuff can be really challenging. It can be disheartening sometimes. So try to keep a smile, and best of luck. And I hope to see you in Toronto on October 1st. Have a great evening, folks. Thanks again.